I mean, first of all, the name of the chairman is the same as the name of the firm. This is basically a family firm.
Yeah.
John Wells, who's a good friend of mine and was the president of IMD and at Harvard Business School for a long time, has done this interesting analysis comparing what he calls managerial capital, which is the U.S., system, with family capital, which is what Toyota's like, and then also Hyundai, for instance, in South Korea, and a lot of the European firms. And they have a totally different perspective. They're part of their communities. They pay their people better. They innovate more, right?
Yes.
They last longer. And the difference is the typical U.S. corporate lead sees themselves in and out of their job in under a decade and tries to optimize for their financial return. And a typical family firm lead sees this as a legacy for their children and their family writ large, not just their immediate family, their business family, their employees, right? They have a totally different view of what it means to be a leader. And, one could argue that the managerial capital model is net destructive of value in the long term, but it optimizes, again, in the short term for maybe 3 or 4 people. By the way, not for shareholders. There's good data that suggests that corporations are not run to maximize shareholder return. Corporations mostly are run to maximize the financial benefit of the 5 senior executives.
That's so interesting that you say that. When I was working on my first book, American Icon, someone who I spent a lot of time with was one of Ford's senior board members who had been the former CEO of Estee Lauder, another family-owned company.
Yeah.
And when before my book came out, but when it was done and we were chatting, we were talking about, one of the things that he and I talked about is the reason Ford was able to do some of the things that ultimately saved it during the global financial crisis, like bringing in the president of Boeing to run the company, was because even though Ford is a publicly traded company, it's a very unusual one in that, as you know, I'm sure that the family controls the company through super voting shares and can't be diluted. So it really is a family company for all intents and purposes. And, his thesis, and he showed me this at several points, was that it was because it was a family controlled company, they were able to do some of these contrarian sorts of things that Wall Street just wouldn't have tolerated, most likely. And we got to talking about this, and he said, you really should write your next book about, the comparing closely held or family held companies to publicly traded companies. Because I had already come to believe through my business reporting that the public markets have a really negative impact on strategic planning and management.
Sure,
because of the perverse incentives that they create. I pitched that to my publisher, and they said, if you write this book, it'll be the last book you ever write, because you will blacklist yourself.
Yeah. But it's funny. Around 7 years ago, another brilliant man who sadly is no longer with us, named Hal Sirkin, and I were together. And Hal was the senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group, and it was BCG's 50th anniversary. And he said to me, here we have all these amazing corporations with executives being paid millions, in some cases tens of millions of dollars in total compensation, and the best thing they can do to increase company value is buy back shares. I mean, you've got to be kidding me, right? I mean, this is like, what are you getting paid for? So, buying back shares and by the way, they got all this money from the government. A lot of the zero cost money that very low cost money that corporations got during the financial downturn that went back in to sort of rebuild liquidity in our society, basically went to share buyback as opposed to creating new jobs or innovation, et cetera. And you're going, wow, you get paid for that? I'm sorry, my dog could do that better. That's not leadership. That's greed.
Thank you for tuning in to The Thinking Leader. Check the show notes for more information about the topics covered in this episode. There, you'll also find a link to our free assessment. Click on it right now to find out if you are a red team thinker with a red team culture.